Hello, friends, and welcome to the Exploring Washington State podcast. My name is Scott Cowan, and I'm the host of the show. Each episode, I have a conversation with an interesting guest who is living in or from Washington State. These are casual conversations with real and interesting people. I think you're going to like the show. So let's jump right in with today's guest. Well, I'm sitting down today with Taylor Russell, and I'm going to read directly off of her website so that you know that I'm not being mean to her. It says she's a 2009 Snohomish High School graduate. Congratulations. She was the 2022 Board Member of the Year for the Historic Downtown Snohomish Association. Congratulations. Mm-hmm. You're the Commissioner for District 5. We don't know what the other districts are, but for District 5, the Snohomish County Historic Preservation Commission. And you are the State Representative for the American Association of Local and State History.
Yes.
Somehow I don't believe this because you're not sitting there wearing black, thick glasses and in a library. So you made all this up. Taylor, welcome. You may regret joining the show, but welcome. You run a website called Snohomish Walks.
Yes, that is correct.
Why? What was the reason for this? How did you get started?
Gosh, well, the seed of it was planted when I was in high school at Snohomish High School.
Where you graduated.
Where I graduated in 2009. Yeah, huge deal. I loved history. Shout out to my history teachers. Dan Parker is one of them. Okay. I just had a great time learning about history, and I went on to Western Washington University, studied history and geography, got a master's in teaching, thought I was going to be a high school history teacher.
Okay.
And totally got off track after graduating from Western. I ended up in the culinary world. I was working as a chef, and I had a great job. I just started it in fall 2019. And the restaurant shut down in March 2020. So Snohomish Walks is a COVID pivot, a pandemic pivot.
Okay. A lot of people got pets during the period of time you opened a business.
Yeah, exactly.
Just like this podcast.
Great. Yeah. A lot of creative things were born of that time because I was receiving unemployment, and I had this time and space to put energy towards my creative projects. Mm-hmm. So I went back to this. I had so many pictures of Snohomish, of all the old houses, just from my many years of living there and always recording that. So I started posting them to Instagram, and basically it was just images, just pretty pictures. Mm-hmm. And it has just grown from there. I started adding captions with the history of each building. I would do deep dives on ancestry.com and all sorts of archives and trace everyone's family histories. And it just, people loved it. I was surprised, but at the same time, it made a lot of sense because it spoke directly to this community in a very hyper-local way.
Okay.
And from there, I made some products. The first one was a historic homes of Snohomish coloring book.
I'm gonna pause you. We're gonna come back to your products for a second. I gotta unpack some of these things you said. I gotta contest with you.
Okay. Yeah.
You don't. I have to fact check everything. And I'm totally kidding you. I loved history in high school too. But that's not a very common thing. Most of my classmates were like, "Oh, this sucks." But I really enjoyed Washington State history in high school. Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed just in general. It was back then. What was contemporary? You're looking at as history. I mean, not kidding. But back then, a lot of the testing was not the standardized stuff that kids have today. So it was easy for me to go, oh yeah. And 1492 Columbus, blah, blah, blah. I remembered the numbers and the facts and figures where my friends all just didn't like that. So I loved history. It was something that I enjoyed a great deal. And so I tease you about it, but I'm kind of there with you.
Oh, good.
But what you said, so this is the part that really you said something, but you kind of danced away from it. We're going to pull you back. So you went to Western
Yep.
and history, and you're going to be a teacher. And then you got in the culinary field.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna break that down.
Yeah, let's unpack that one a little bit. How does one go from a master's? And there's nothing wrong with any of this. The culinary is wonderful. I mean, look at me. I obviously eat. But how did you get what got you going into that field? And obviously, we know what got you out of it. But what got you into it?
Well, first, I'll say that I loved my graduate program in teaching. I was super excited to plan curriculum for history classes. I wanted to present history in an interesting way where young folks would love it and, make it really about story and things you could relate to. Then when I got to the internship part of it and had to actually be in the classroom teaching students, I think it wasn't the right setup for me because you are in front of people performing and these people don't really want to be there. Like they're young kids with other things to do. And I don't know, there's so much that you're growing through at that age. Mm-hmm. And so I kind of felt like quite disenchanted.
And that's and look, I've heard that from a lot of people that thought that they wanted to get into the educational field, which is great because we need people in the educational field. But then you go and do the job and you're like, this isn't what and what's funny is that I don't want to say you should know. I don't mean it like in a snotty know-it-all. You should have known, but we should all have known because when we're sitting in those classes, you were sitting in those classes just a few years earlier, and so I'm kind of teasing you, but at the same time, it's so you got into the culinary field, and we don't have to go there. That's fine. But what I actually think, where I compliment you in all seriousness here, so you get the master's, you stand up in front of the room, you go, this. Thanks, but
it didn't feel like important for me to be teaching them about history. That was like, It wasn't that anything was wrong with the content. It was just like, these kids are at a different place right now, and this doesn't feel like the thing they need. They need like emotional social learning, and they need like practical things. And
right. What grade? Yeah. What grades were you going to try to teach?
It was going to be high school.
Okay, high school. All right. Okay. So culinary.
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, I guess we will unpack that. How did you go from this to the culinary? What was how'd you end up there?
Well, I abandoned the internship when I realized it wasn't right, and I actually ended up with a job in the mortgage world as an assistant. That was just because I had family members in the industry, and so I needed a job, and it was just a really helpful moment in time. But that was definitely not for me and my spirit. So I found some work at a restaurant that I just really enjoyed, customer service, and that role kind of evolved to, come back in the kitchen and help out. So,
so no formal training.
No formal training. No, I learned most of what I know from the Snoqualmie Heirloom Cook Shop.
Okay.
I don't know if folks will remember that place, but it was in a very iconic brick historic building in downtown Snoqualmie. Okay. Really great place. Now closed, unfortunately. And then I kind of just started freelancing for different caterers. So I got a really huge variety of different styles of food and different ways of being in the kitchen. And it was great. I mean, it's a life skill that I don't really need to be employed for it, but it's so useful now.
One of my good friends always used to he wanted me to tell my son. So he sat my son down and told him, he said, my son's name is Nick. And he said, Nick, you need to learn how to make pizza. Because if you know how to make pizza, you can go anywhere in the world and always have a job. You don't need to speak the language. You just need to make pizza. People will eat pizza no matter what. They're always looking for people. That
That's
was
so
his
true.
that was his culinary advice for my son, who didn't take it. He
I
eats pizza.
wonder, do you think there's a point at which there's, what is the max number of pizza places one community can support? Is there a max?
Boy, we're going to get philosophical here. I think the maximum number of pizza places that a community can support is the number of one more than the population of the community. So if the community has 100, 101 is the capacity, because it will draw from other communities. Have you
and everyone
ever
has their pizza preference. Like it's all so unique to each person.
Yeah,
Unlimited.
it is absolutely. It's one of those really versatile food delivery systems that works for almost everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not a big fan of fruit on pizzas, like, but non-fruit, it's hard to go wrong with pizza. All right. But let's be fair. You did some time in the mortgage, and I mean you did some time in the mortgage business, because I come from that world.
Really?
Yeah, I'm real estate broker side. Okay, so I know those people. You did some time, hard time.
I mean, it was eye-opening for me because I learned about people's finances basically. I was like, whoa, this is how people do it. Yeah. It's amazing.
All right, so you did that. And then you went and got into the culinary business. Both of them were devastated by COVID, though. Had you stayed in the mortgage business, COVID destroyed lending for a while. Yeah. And lending's being hurt right now. So you pivoted to your own thing. Growing up, were you entrepreneurial? Anyone in your family entrepreneurial? Where did this come from? My
dad always had entrepreneurial interests.
Okay.
And he's also just super creative. So I think I get that from him. Okay. There's definitely a sense of like, if anyone tells me no, I can't create something, then I'm going to just make it myself and do it. Okay. So I think that's like the root of my entrepreneurial spirit is basically just, I'll do it myself. And not interested in hearing no.
All right. And that's a trait of a lot of entrepreneurial people. Mm-hmm. So you start Snohomish Walks. The first product is a coloring book.
Yes.
Which is cool. And I don't, I don't necessarily want to go down the business rabbit hole. I do and I don't. Okay. But if you would have had a board of directors or shareholders and you said to them, my first product's going to be a coloring book, they probably would have said no to you. Like, really?
Oh, totally.
So why did you decide on a coloring book?
I mean, I had little confidence in Snohomish Walks selling products. Okay. So in some respects, I chose the coloring book because it was minimal investment.
Okay, fair.
And input. I obviously had the time investment of drawing the homes, but it was something it was a skill I really wanted to learn, to be honest. Something for a long time that I intended to do. And finally had the time. I think it's also, we can get into this later, but my passion is really writing. Mm-hmm. And I've always wanted to be an author. I've wanted to write books. So I thought it was kind of funny to make my first published book a coloring book.
With no words.
With no words except for the front, title page.
Okay. All right. I got to go back. There's one other question I meant to ask you.
Okay.
And I know nothing about your life, anything like that. How thrilled were your parents when you said, well, I've got a bachelor's, I've got a master's, and I don't want to use
it? They were confused and frustrated, and they often are with me because I have a lot of interest and I, pursue them all. Like I have a bunch of, there's like a bunch of little spokes of the wheel. I go down all of them and then I'm like, oh, okay, done. And move on to the next thing. And that's not their personality types really. But I'm learning as I get older to embrace that and make that a strength rather than just.
Well, I mean, a wheel's going to collapse if it doesn't have spokes. So you've got to have enough spokes to keep. There you go.
I love that analogy. Right. I'm going to use that.
You use that on your parents. Sorry, folks. Hope if you're listening, I'm really sorry. I gave her some ammunition. No, I'm teasing you because, I went to college for finance and I ended up in the mortgage business for 89 days. And then I went somewhere completely different for the next 7 years. It's just like, nothing about my college experience other than maybe the people I met, because I met some wonderful people, and the experience of being at college. Those things are lifelong, made a lifelong imprint in me. And just like I'm sure your time at Western's made an imprint on you, that you can't take, whether you have a degree or 2 degrees or 6 degrees, it's still your time at the college had this imprint.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I know a lot of people, they get a degree in X and they never go near X the rest of their life. It's really more prevalent than you might think.
I've been surprised when people tell me what their college degrees are, and I'm like, how, what is that linear path? Like, it's probably not linear.
One guy I went to college with said he was going to get into HR. He got into HR. He worked for one company his entire career, and he just retired. And he had a great career. On the outside looking in, his career was one of grand success. And I'm just like, how does one go down that 1-lane road your entire life without taking a detour? That's just not me. And like you, I'm kind of like, hey, let's do this, let's do that. And I think we should make these things, but we try them.
We should make detours okay and acceptable and encouraged, because I get really worked up when I'm trying to write a resume or something, and I know I need to present myself in some sort of linear, like I did this, I'm like clearly growing in this one direction, and it feels so false.
I agree with you.
It's really hard, and I think there's so much so much benefit to having many interests and passions and
I think for most of us, I think some people need to just have the 1-lane road that they go down their entire lives, and the rest of us need to wander around blindfolded with our shoes tied together. And
that's how it feels. Yeah.
And I warned you, this is how the show's going to go too. So you're welcome to my mind and the bad places and crazy places it goes. So you wanted to be a writer, and you started your writing career by doing a coloring book. Let's get back to that. So how was that? So you came up with the idea of the coloring book. You sat down, you created the coloring book. You now have the coloring book completed, right? You got physical copies of the coloring book, right?
Yep.
Where did you start selling them?
I first launched it on Instagram. I'm actually just remembering that when the first edition was about double the size of the copy I sell now, and it was printed on the most high quality paper ever. And I bought it at a price that was great, and I could sell it at the price that I wanted. I went to reprint it later, and it turns out there was like some error in the printing company's order form, so I was getting a book at like $3 or something that should have been like $15, just the printing cost. So the first one I launched was absolutely beautiful. And sold it to my Instagram audience. Got it into a couple stores.
Okay, so I'm going to pause
downtown Snohomish.
I'm going to pause you because this is a question I like to ask authors.
Okay.
What was it like when you saw the book in the store for the first time?
Oh, incredible. And it's still in a lot of those stores, and I don't believe it when I see it. I'm like, what is that? Like, why is my weird project here?
Okay. Hopefully that's okay. So that's okay. I'm going to stop you. That's both a good and a bad thing to think of. Why is my weird project still here? Because it's not selling is a bad thing.
I mean, I think it's selling. I do get some, payouts monthly.
Okay.
From the store.
But if it's not selling and it's still there, that's not the good thing we're looking for. You might just collect them and go away. No, so you sold it on Instagram. You're selling it in some local stores in Snohomish. What was let's ask the Instagram audience, because that wasn't just people in Snohomish going into a brick and mortar store. This was the world. What was the feedback you were getting from people, and why were they buying a coloring book about a word they probably couldn't pronounce?
I think most of my audience was from Snohomish. I know a lot of
Okay.
people, a lot of people, would comment or leave reviews about we go on a nightly walk with our kids and we scout out the houses so we can match colors and whatnot and
So
bring them to life.
Okay. So people are trying to do
Real to life.
Real life. Okay. All
Documentary coloring books. And I actually, within the same chapter of my life, I also made coloring books for other towns in the Pacific Northwest.
Mm-hmm.
I made one for Bellingham, Everett, and Spokane.
Okay.
And I got the cutest email from someone saying that we're so excited. We got, I think it was the Bellingham coloring book. It's for my 85-year-old mother, and basically the only thing she can and wants to do is color in this book, and I drive her around town so we can sit outside the houses while she colors them, which was so adorable.
Yeah, that's very cool. That is actually super cool. So you did the other books, and you said that chapter of your life. So I mean, they're still on your website, so you still are selling them, but we're not going to see historic homes of Burien anytime soon, or Federal Way.
I don't think so. I might consider historic homes of Seattle, in part because that's a big market. But yeah, it's a spoke of a wheel. Like, I did it, and I think I'm done. Moved on to other projects.
I would tell you, if you decided you wanted to do another city that has great looking older architecture, is Tacoma.
Yeah.
Tacoma has some really great old homes. And the nice thing for you, when you're doing your research, they're all in the same 2-mile radius. So they're all, they're all one. It's easy to, where Seattle, you got to go all around Seattle to.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll close the chapter on the coloring books. What was next?
I'm trying to remember. Oh, next was a puzzle. Which I guess the puzzle was born of a print. So before it was a puzzle, it was this image. It's a really cool bird's eye view map of Snohomish.
Okay.
It was drawn in 1889 or 1890 by basically a traveling artist who went around to different towns in that era. And real estate agents or civic boosters, whatnot, would pay these artists to draw these bird's eye maps.
Right.
So there's this great black and white map. I colorized it and really brought it to life in a whole new way. So that was a super fun project. I would like to do more of those. That spoke of the wheel is still active. And yeah, I printed it as prints you can put on your wall. And then I also made it into a puzzle, which was really fun. Okay.
Interesting. I'm noticing a theme here, but we'll keep pulling on the thread here.
Is that the theme?
Snohomish. So let's talk about the walking tours though.
Okay.
Where did you get the idea? And sorry, I can't think of another. I'm going to say this. Walk me through kind of an example of a current, what one would expect if they went on one of these tours with you.
Yeah, the walking tour idea was also born probably a few years before I started the Instagram. There's a great author in Snohomish named Warner Blake, and he had a book release. The book was about one of our town's architects, and so he was offering these special edition tours to correspond with the book. And I went on one, and I was like, this is so great. Why aren't there tours all the time in Snohomish? And I stayed quiet, thinking that, but all the other people on the tour were saying the same thing. Like, oh my God, I would love to do this. I wish there was a residential tour. I wish there was a downtown tour, etc. And I thought, okay, I'm going to do it.
Okay.
Which is kind of crazy because I'm really an introverted person. And like I said, I had no interest standing in front of a group of high schoolers and like performing history.
Right. But
made no sense.
But I'm going to offer you that people that sign up for a walking tour aren't doing it because they need, it's not a graduation requirement. It's not mandated. So they're doing it because
there's no test.
Right. There's no test. Well, maybe you should have tests.
Just
putting that out there, offer like a full refund if they get 100% of the questions right, and then give them an impossible question. Just like,
ooh,
something.
That's a great marketing idea.
Yeah. Anyway, and you got to change the impossible question every time, because let's be honest, people are going to cheat. They're just going to go, hey, the answer you need to know is blah. And then pretty soon you're not making any money on your walking tours. No. And all kidding aside, if I go on a walking tour, it's because I find it to be potentially interesting. I'm going because I expect to learn something and be, I don't want to say entertained, like, but like it enjoyable. How about that? So I think that might be really in line with what you wanted to do in college.
I think it totally is. I think I've become a public history teacher,
Yeah.
And I don't have to be accountable to anyone or any state standards. I can write whatever I want and talk about whatever I want. And that's been great. And it's gotten really good response so far. I mean, I definitely was like, okay, I'll write the tour, but I need to find someone else to host it.
Mm-hmm.
But as soon as I did the first one and got that positive human feedback, I was like, okay, I'll keep doing this. And now it's my baby and I don't want to give it away to anybody.
Okay.
But yeah.
So walk me through, when are these tours conducted?
I have been doing them on the second Saturdays of every month.
Okay.
That might expand through the summer since everyone wants to be outside a bit more. I have actually been so lucky and had no rainy days since November when I started. So I made it the whole winter with no rain.
That's shocking to me. Okay.
It is shocking.
So second Saturday I show up, and how many people are in a typical group? What's your capacity? What can you handle? Like it's like the pizza place question. I mean, what's the what
my max capacity for a walking tour? I like to do 10.
Okay.
Especially since we're doing it on Saturdays and Snohomish gets very busy, and you got to corral people on this corner of a sidewalk. And
you're not having them hold hands as they cross the street or hold onto a rope together. I mean,
I should probably start doing that. Just to be safe. I had to talk to the insurance agent the other day and figure out, can I lead people on these tours and cross roads and walk upstairs? And it's a yes, I can.
Okay. So you're
all protected.
Okay. So the goal is the capacity of the tour is 10.
Mm-hmm. We start at Cady Park, which is really where the roots of Snohomish began. It's a historic boat landing. And then it depends on if we're doing a downtown or a residential tour, but we have a little circuit. It takes just over an hour.
Okay.
And we talk about all sorts of buildings and larger themes of Snohomish history. I've been on a lot of historic walking tours in my life because I like this kind of thing. But I also really tried to pull all of the best practices of a good walking tour and apply them to my own. So I like to keep things moving. I like to have really strong, interesting characters that I'm sharing.
Okay.
And I bring a bunch of old photos so you can see what it looked like in the past, and then look at this building right in front of you, which I think is a really fun element.
On the home tour, you ever have anybody that, get off my lawn, or, that they're you're all stopped in front of the house at 101 Main Street, and the people are like, would you stop looking at us? I mean, if you live in a home that's I'm sorry, I really do believe that if you're living in a historic home, you kind of have to know that people are going to look at it.
Yeah. I have not had that happen yet, but I honestly have a lot of anxiety about that happening. And I've even looked into the laws of this. Like, as long as I'm not standing on their property, I can take pictures of their houses, and I can, stand outside and talk about them.
Right.
I think if I'd done this like 10 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
there might have been more confusion and concern about it. But Snohomish has really grown, and for better or worse, the homes in the historic district have gotten much more expensive and much nicer. And so I think it's kind of expected that folks are outside your house talking about it, admiring it.
Honestly, wouldn't you, if you bought a home, wouldn't you kind of be bummed if you bought a historic home? Nothing about Snohomish here, just in general. Let's say you bought this historic home, and you're going to abide by the rules and regulations of maintaining the historic home, depending on what community you're in and all of those things. Wouldn't you be a little disappointed? Like, nobody looks at my house.
Totally. Yeah.
A little bummed. Yeah.
Yeah.
Being the house in the neighborhood where nobody stops for Halloween. It's like, well, what did we do wrong? We put all the things in the yard and nobody comes by.
So far, the feedback from homeowners that I know has all been positive, and they want their house featured and talked about because exactly, they're proud of it. And they've done a lot of work on the renovation, and they're, treasuring this historic resource that obviously we are too. We're all on the same page.
Right. Yeah, no, I kid, but it's half my lawn. I could
totally see that.
I could totally see that. Well, that's cool that you're doing this. And so you're doing them once a month, and, and I'm on your website, and it says here. And so if it's written down and it's on the internet, it's gotta be true. We've sold out every tour since launch. Congratulations. That's very cool.
Thank you.
So now here's an interesting piece. A portion of your ticket helps fund the Historic Downtown Snohomish Association. That's very cool. How did you get involved with that organization?
Well, they scouted me. The executive director, Megan, she reached out and wanted me to serve on their board.
Okay.
The Historic Downtown Snohomish Association for a long time has been about boosting the economic vitality of Snohomish.
All right.
Where we host different events and support different programs, but there needed to be a stronger history element. Mm-hmm. So she saw the work that I was doing, and invited me to bring in more history programs and events and whatnot, which so far is off to a great start.
Okay.
I have a committee dedicated to historic preservation projects.
Okay.
And so far, so good. Yeah.
Cool. I think it's great that you're giving back. That's very cool. Let's stop talking about Snohomish for just a second. Let's go to this more. The state representative for the American Association of Local and State History. Mm-hmm. What on earth is that? And don't say it's an association about history. Elaborate.
It's an association based in America. Okay. Talking about
when was it established? No. What's the overarching intent of that organization?
Yeah, that is an organization. They are based on the East Coast, and they're trying to kind of become more well known over here on the West Coast. Okay. Basically, they provide all sorts of resources for small historical societies and museums and whatnot. They have an annual awards show, where they highlight all sorts of small history projects. And so my role as a state representative is to field all these nominations that come in for this awards show. And like I said, they're trying to build their West Coast brand. So like the majority of their nominations all come from like Boston and South Carolina, Virginia, like all those places with very old history.
Compared to ours, yes.
Yes. But this year's award ceremony is being hosted in Boise, Idaho. So they're trying to make a big push to get more West Coast representation. So,
okay. And how long have you been involved with this organization? And how did you hear about them? Because not that I know everything, I don't at all, but I've never heard of this. So it's intriguing to me.
Yeah, I have. Yeah, I would like to grow and brand more for them. I've been involved about a year, so it's still new.
Okay.
And I forget the second part of your question.
How did you hear about them?
Oh, how did I hear about them? I was looking up basically resources for local history. I think local history is so important and so fun and so cool. And they offer all sorts of like seminars and like professional development programs for local historians to learn how to talk about your history, how to share it online, how to get grant funding for your museum, etc.
Okay, very cool. Okay. Yeah. All right, and we're working our way backwards here. Commissioner for District 5 of the Snohomish County Historic Preservation Commission. How many districts are there?
I want to say 7, but I don't know why I want to say that. So it could be right, and it could just be loose in the back of my head.
Could be completely wrong, folks. Okay.
Or it could be totally wrong.
So we're gonna operate on the premise that there's at least 5 because you're in District 5. But no, we're gonna operate on the premise that there's got to be 5. But there's between 5 and 7, which maybe we'll pick 6. But anyway, this is just for Snohomish County, right? So
yes.
So dividing up Snohomish County, District 5, I'm going to guess is the city town of Snohomish, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. Is Everett its own district? I mean, what other districts are there that you're aware of?
I mean, yeah, maybe we could figure this out just by thinking of large communities. There's Everett, there's Edmonds, there's Granite Falls, there's Snohomish, so we're up to 4. There must be maybe a Lake Stevens, Marysville, something in between.
Marysville. That would be 6.
But what's east of Snohomish? Monroe?
Oh, Monroe. Okay.
You can even go to Index.
Isn't Index in King County? Beyond. Isn't that?
I think Index is Snohomish.
I always get confused. It always seems like King County butts back in over there. It's like it's ours.
At some point on Highway 2, you drop down into King County for a moment.
It's just weird. Yeah. Okay. So how long have you been doing this? That work?
That one's also recent. That's just a few months. And that is, that is part of the county itself, the county government.
Okay.
And they have obviously this Historic Preservation Commission, which oversees all sorts of historic preservation projects. And they too have grant funding, grant money that they distribute to local historical societies and whatnot doing good work. So part of my role is deciding who gets that money.
Okay, very cool.
Which projects are funded. So,
well, I know, is this to like help people who want to get their house put on the historic rolls?
It's bigger projects.
Okay. I was just going to say, it's like your walking tour. Think about how nice people would be if you help them get. No, I'm kidding.
Totally. I mean, that'd be cool. I think it has to be privatized because this is. I want to say it's tax dollars or it's coming from the state level. Tax dollars.
It's tax dollars of some port. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. At some level. So no, it's bigger projects like museums adding new exhibits. A lot of the work this past year has been digitizing old newspapers and old photos because there is so much dang history sitting in boxes and basements. And digitizing those is a valued effort, I think.
So I am on a page that says Snohomish, small town, big history. And I'm just scanning. This is what I do. And I quote, "It's a very weird place."
I wrote that.
Some storefronts were built quickly and hand-operated cable ferry strung across the river. It was a very weird place, he said. Trees along the bank.
That's a quote. I didn't.
Yeah,
I typed it.
You typed it, but I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. It's a very weird place. Okay, but as I scrolled here, you have looks like an old postcard of Pilchuck Julia and Jack.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to read exactly, and you have to help me.
Okay.
Coast Salish people known as the
Stodobish.
Please say that again.
Stodobish.
Stodobish.
That is what I interpret from the letters together.
So, folks,
and
since
we
you
need an
can't,
expert.
this is a podcast audio, so we're going to spell this out, folks. She has it spelled, and this is how we get to Stodobish. SDOH DOH HOHBSH.
Yes.
You did a far better job pronouncing that than I'm ever going to do it. I'm not even going to try. I looked at that and went, what on earth is that? Okay.
It took some practice, and I hope I'm doing it right, because now it's kind of stuck in my brain like that is the right way. I think there's probably, if I was a native speaker of Salish language, Lushootseed, then I think there'd be more nasal to it. But I don't know if I know how to do that.
I couldn't do it. I could not say that. So I'm just scrolling, and you've got some great photographs through the years.
Thank you.
You know, some old postcards, some logging photos, some more modern stuff of some of the historic homes. And I forgot about, you know, in the 60s that there was some, like in lots of areas in America, you know, we were tearing things down that maybe we regret doing.
Yeah, the 60s was interesting for Snohomish, because it really was like, right now, if you go to Snohomish, it is a vibrant, happening community and growing like crazy. But the 60s, it was quite depressed, and there just wasn't the same industries that had supported it all along, like logging and mining and fishing and whatnot. And so they wanted to tear down all the old buildings, like everything that I'm basically monetizing, and put up a mall, like a Northgate style mall, which I am so glad didn't happen. Like, and it came close. Like there was for months, there was this back and forth between city planners and architects and someone drawing up the plans. And it came down to a city council vote, and the city council didn't have enough money to make it happen. So they voted no.
Okay.
So we were saved.
So I'm still scrolling, and you've got, and I'm not going to click on all these, but you got map of historic places, index of historic Snohomish, and then you've got one called researching your home, and you've got an estimate invoice for what a home would have cost in 1911. Now, so here's a couple of things about this that I question whether it's real or not. The date is March 6th. And the completion date is June 6th. So in 90 days, they can build a home. No way. That just doesn't happen. But what I want to know is, so there
was far less oversight, though. So you didn't have to wait for your approvals and like someone being like, plumbing's great or whatever. You just power through.
It's good enough. But here's the thing. It says kind of building, frame house, 9 rooms. Contract price, $3,900, which sounds super cheap, except for in 1911, that was a lot of money. So this was not just a little shack of a home being built. This was an interesting home.
Yeah. I'm curious what that would be in $23. Should I?
Yeah. Why I talk, you look that up, because I'd be curious. But my question about the researching homes, you are probably familiar that you could have ordered a home through Sears and Roebuck catalog back in the day, right?
Yeah.
Are there any of the Sears and Roebuck homes that you know of in Snohomish?
There is one that I know for sure, and there are definitely more than one. But there's one that I know for sure, which is the Klein House. It is on Avenue A, and it's a beautiful Victorian home. Lots of the like gingerbread specialty decor and whatnot.
Right.
And I learned that it was a kit house from someone who had repainted it or done the roof, something like that. Someone commented that, oh yeah, I knew the original owners, and it was this kit house. Right. So
I always thought it was interesting. You could literally buy anything for the home, including the home in Sears and Roebuck catalog back in the day.
It's fascinating.
Yeah, it really is. In the old Sears distribution warehouse down there in Seattle. It's where Starbucks is now. The Starbucks Corporate Center used to be the Sears distribution center. And so each of those floors is 110,000 square feet. And there was circular, when Starbucks took the space, there was still where people could it was hardwood floors, and people could roller skate over and drop the package in the chute, and it would circle down to the packing room at the bottom. And so people would be pulling orders and dropping them down these circular chutes. So, imagine your house going down. No, just kidding.
Well, I was going to say we've kind of come full circle, because now Amazon offers those like tiny homes you just buy delivered.
Right.
It's
and
crazy.
It's kind of interesting. Yeah. So you've done a really interesting job to me of bringing attention to Snohomish's vibrant history to a digital age, a distracted digital age. Do you find your audience, who is your audience?
My audience, if I'm going to like generalize it or take the median average of it, tends to be women basically my age, in their 30s, who have young families living in Snohomish. And then I have another chunk of followers that mainly exist on Facebook. Facebook's a bit older of a crowd. And so it's so funny. Like, I'll post the same thing on Instagram and then on Facebook, and the way it's received is so different. And Facebook, it's an older crowd who has been around Snohomish for much longer, and they've like experienced this history themselves. And so there'll be so many comments from people sharing their story, or like, my grandma knew Pilchuck Julia, and like all sorts of things. And it's so fun, and I actually learn so much and get so much history from my post Facebook comments.
Well, it's funny that you say that. Wait a second. So I commented on the Pilchuck Julia postcard on your History of Snohomish page. I just bounced over to your Facebook page, and I'm scrolling, and at the time we're recording this 2 days ago, it says Pilchuck Julia occupies a strange though honored place in Snohomish.
Yeah.
Elaborate.
Well, I wanted to do a Pilchuck Julia post because I was thinking about Mother's Day, to be honest, but I'm also impatient, so I posted it 2 days ago, which is late April. Yeah, Pilchuck Julia is a really interesting character because there's like no records. Records are so non-existent. I basically just have census records to work off of, and then all of these very romanticized Victorian like newspaper articles, where I think I have a quote on that where they say something like, Pilchuck Julia was here when the Snohomish River was dug and Mount Rainier was builded. And it's all this really flowery, silly, dramatized description of, a real human being who was probably like living a pretty tough life with lots of transitions and changes going on while she's, adapting to all these white folks moving in, and new economic system and all sorts of things. So I was trying to capture a bit of her history as factually as I could, and humanize her a bit more.
So she married a guy that was only known as Pilchuck Jack.
Yeah, unfortunately, we do not have their native names.
And they were gifted 5 acres. I mean, that's kind of cool. So what? Yikes! Jack passed away in 1903 after being struck by a train. It was rough. Her
husband was walking on the railroad trestle, which is, I don't know how many feet above the ground, but quite high up, and was struck by a train and died. And then a few years later, her son was also walking on a railroad trestle, and he fell from it and broke his back. So a little bit of tragedy there, right at the turn of the century.
This is fascinating. So, and I'm just going to read your words, rip you off.
Okay.
Sorry. Julia supported the family by monetizing her traditional ways, selling clams, salmon, berries, and handmade baskets. You add, one hopes she received a royalty from the Snohomish Advance, must be the newspaper, that from 1913 to 1917, which published a Pilchuck Julia Says column. How on earth do you think they picked a Native American woman to do Pilchuck Julia Says, and the column was with weather predictions? So,
I mean, I think that was part of this like Victorian romanticization of the Native American. I mean, it's not like they had an advice column from her. It was it was like weather predictions that were probably written in broken English, like I think there's these printed quotes where they're saying Pilchuck Julia says the snow will be 2 squaws deep. And I don't know, that's totally not appropriate to say now.
Right.
Totally not
right.
cool.
And that's, I'm kind of smirking because like, well, but yeah. Okay. But so then you go on to say, so they published the Pilchuck Julia Says column with weather predictions. It was so accurate, it was picked up by other papers and ran throughout the county. Really bizarre to me. That's just, I've not, but then, and this is the last thing we'll talk about with her is, because it's the end of the story, frankly. In the early 1920s, Julia, now in her 80s, earned top billing on a parade float for the Klahaya. See, it's okay. Another episode where Scott cannot pronounce words. Klahaya Days advertises a seer, weather prophet, and 100% American.
Yeah, I think that was an interesting moment in time that I would love to dig deeper into, because the 1920s, America is very into its national identity and its white identity. So I think what they're doing there is, advertising her, and you'll see in the picture that she's sitting next to a teepee, and there would not have been teepees in Snohomish,
or and especially not with one with an American flag draped on it.
That too, exactly. Yeah, it's so funny. I mean, they're really writing their own history there. And merging all.
It is, and I got to, I always try to stay very like not have an opinion whether something is correct or not. Yeah, but I think this is interesting though. So you are going back, and this is my interpretation of what you're doing. You're going back into the history of your community, and you're finding nuggets of interesting things. Good, interesting, not so good, interesting. It's not necessarily. I don't think you're being very Pollyanna here. I think you're kind of showing. You're showing, but you're also you're bringing it to us in 2023, and you're saying, hey, look at this. This is a person who had a Pilchuck Julia Says column, and snow was 2 squaws deep. Some people might get really offended by that. I don't personally know why, but it's interesting how this person in Snohomish's history played a role like she did. That's pretty cool. And so I like what you're doing a lot. I think what you're doing to showcase Snohomish is very, very cool.
Thank you. And one of my goals with this, which is partially based in my graduate school teacher training, and partially just because this is the type of writer I am, but I really want to make this history so digestible and relevant that it's not like, ugh, history, so boring. So what, like all those sorts of judgments that folks have.
Well, I'm going to read your latest Facebook post just because I think you summarized it pretty nicely. Did you know Snohomish Walks is 100% owned and operated by Taylor Russell, a 2009 SHS grad, independent historian, and hyper-curious creative. I write, research, and publish Snohomish history because somebody has to. But seriously, I'm darned happy it's me, and even happier to share. You can support Snohomish Walks and get even more history. That's all caps, folks. She's yelling even more history. Over on my Patreon. Over on my Patreon. Teaser. I just posted a first look for my newest product launch. I post exclusive in-depth articles and extra. I have to hit more. Oh, darn. And extra found photos, new products behind the scenes, and Patreon-only discount codes for Snohomish Walks retail and walking tours. And she's basically then tells you to join her Patreon page.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting transition because you are the first creator I've talked to in a long time that's still using Patreon.
Oh, really?
Well,
where's everyone going? Tell me.
I don't know. That's just it. I don't know what they're doing. So I'd like to, if you can we shift and talk about Patreon?
Yeah.
Well, besides why the question is, why did you do it? But besides the answer to make money, what does Patreon, it allows you to put a paywall up and add bonus content, right? Mm-hmm. Has it been a good platform for you?
Yes, I think so. I think I should have started it sooner.
Okay. All right.
Because now I would say my audience is quite used to the quality of free material.
Okay.
That I'm providing. So I think I've had a hard time transitioning it, but I do have a good chunk of supporters there. And basically, yeah, I mean, I'm a writer. So like fitting what I want to say into an Instagram post can sometimes be quite challenging. And I wanted to have an outlet to share longer posts and things that are more complicated that I don't want to simplify into, however many characters an Instagram post is.
You should try writing on Twitter.
Really, I couldn't handle it.
Really,
for many reasons, I'm not on Twitter.
Really force you into, being concise. Okay.
But for example, like I have a post coming out next month on the Patreon, which builds on that Pilchuck Julia history that I shared, because I went on a deeper dive into the relationship between white men and Native American women and all these different complications of pioneer men coming out here, marrying Native American women, and the like legalities and like there's all sorts of stuff. Okay. I'm not going to share it all because you got to look on the Patreon. But there's so much to say about these topics, and it's so fascinating and eager to write it.
You also have an Etsy store.
I do.
You've got enamel pins. I'm looking at those because we're just launching. We just pre-launched our first enamel pin.
I saw your pin. It's really cute. I love it.
Thank you. It's been interesting. And so I'm looking at yours, and I think these are really cool. I didn't realize until, I don't know, a few months ago that pins were a thing. I had no clue. Like it's a creepy set. It's a
big world.
It's a really big and scary world. I kid, but yikes. Yeah, pins, everybody. Pins. Like, really? Huh.
Yeah. And the thing is like this new, I just launched a 2023 Snohomish collectible pin set. And I intentionally did 3 homes and just 1 commercial building because I find that people all across the country buy the homes ones. Like they've never been to Snohomish and they have no connection, but people collect house pins. So it totally widens my audience. And I think it's so cool that now someone in like Florida has the Klein house, the Victorian Sears Roebuck Snohomish house.
Go figure. It's cool because you're right. I'm looking at your 2023 collectible pins, and I don't care that they're Snohomish houses. So I don't mean that in a negative way. I'm looking at them going, these are cool. I don't care that they're Snohomish or Spokane or Seattle or Sequim or anywhere. I just think they're cool. So it's like, I would buy them if I were into pins. I wouldn't, it's not, I don't mean disrespect. Like I don't care that they're Snohomish. I don't mean like that. It's just, I'm not buying them because they're Snohomish. I'm buying them because I think they're cool. And it's interesting that you say that so the people aren't buying the historic commercial buildings as much. Those seem to be more local folks that are buying the Snohomish pin, the commercial bins.
Not on Etsy, at least. Etsy is the one that gets that more national audience, obviously, because it's Etsy. Well, I'll ask you, what do you think's the most popular pin?
Oh my gosh, I have to go back and look and see how many I get choices. Sorry, I gotta dodge the camera here. Go
Technically,
back.
there's only 4 choices because that 2023 set has not been
Okay.
publicly launched.
It hasn't. So you got 4. You've got the Snohomish pin, the Carnegie Library. You got the Victorian Klein House. You've got the Snyder House, I think, and
Yep.
the Oxford Saloon. Those are my choices, right?
Yep.
I'm going to say the Victorian Klein.
Nope.
Then I'm going to go with the one. Okay. Then I'm going to go the completely opposite direction because the Oxford, is it the Oxford?
It's not the Oxford, although that's probably second.
Well, I've got a 50-50 chance of guessing the last two. No, what? So which one sold better?
The most popular one has been the Carnegie Library.
Interesting.
People really love that library, and I think they see it as a symbol of Snohomish, which, I mean, it's great. That's why I made these pins. And the Carnegie was recently renovated, I think, starting in 2020 or 2021.
Okay.
So it's been this like it was so ugly before. It had this terrible 1960s edition built on the front of it. You couldn't even see the beauty of the building. And they tore that down. They repainted it. Now it's this like beautiful yellow squash color. And folks have just been super excited to support their Carnegie.
All right. I can't remember your answer. I know I asked you this question during our pre-call interview, and I can't remember it. Full disclosure. So, are you a coffee drinker? You're going to say no.
I can just tell. I'm not a coffee drinker.
This is where the show goes off the rails. You're not a coffee drinker. How can you be a historian and a writer and not drink coffie? What fuels
I think I should start.
What fuels your if you're not fueled by caffeine when you're writing? What fuels you? Do you drink tea?
I don't drink tea. Sometimes I'll do a chai. Looking Glass Coffee. Shout out to Looking Glass Coffee in Snohomish. I think they have the best chai tea I've ever had. I don't know what the mix is, although I think they sell it. It's the best chai I've ever had. But yeah, caffeine is like so intense for me that I have one chai and I'm set for like 3 days.
See, imagine how productive you'd be on coffee, on real caffeine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, think about it.
You can
write a book in a weekend. You could write a book in a weekend. In fact, you wouldn't even type it. You would just dictate it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and then go back and let AI clean it up and then go, what the heck did I just say for the last 63 pages?
Like, this book is written on coffee and AI.
Yeah. What author isn't using AI these days? No, just kidding. So local Snohomish now, what's going on in Snohomish that people should know about today? Not historically, but like currently. What's happening in Snohomish? Yeah, what's happening in modern day Snohomish?
Snohomish has so many cool shops and restaurants, and it's like becoming, when I was a kid growing up, there was lots and lots of antique stores. In fact, it still uses like the designation, the antique capital of the Northwest.
Yeah.
I don't know if it honestly is because a lot of those stores have closed and they've changed, but there's still tons of cool shops with lots of vintage stuff, lots of like home and decor.
Right.
I think that's its main industry. And it also has so many yummy food places. That's kind of been more recent, but there's actually a lot of young people who I graduated with, like from my high school class, who've left and come back to Snohomish and started businesses, which I think is common. Right. One of those is Grain Artisan Bakery.
Okay.
They, I think, are one of the best bakeries in the Pacific Northwest. They have a lot of vegan and gluten-free options if you are eating that way, but like overall, it's still just really solid, good baked goods.
Okay.
There's also Radical Roots Farm, owned by my friend James, and he has the most beautiful farmers market booth I've ever seen. It's a local farm, like within the city limits of Snohomish, and he just like works. I think it's only like an acre, maybe a little bit more, but it's not very big. And he has just maximized the potential of this land. And they make the best veggies, the best carrots. Like if you're going to come to Snohomish, make sure it's a Thursday when the farmer's market is happening and get the carrots. Carrots by James. They're so amazing.
That should be the tagline for the show. Carrots by James. Awesome. Okay. I tease, but okay. You know, when I think of Snohomish, it's funny because like what, you know, you've talked about kind of what I'll call the touristy stuff, food and antiques and all that stuff. Industry wise, what are the big employers there now? Are there
it
any?
Feels, I mean, there's not like a major mill or something as there used to be. It seems like real estate and mortgage are crazy. There are so many mortgage offices in Snohomish.
Yeah.
It's kind of nuts. And I mean, we've kind of joked about that industry in this episode, but like they are some of my best clients because I'm making all this home material and this local Snohomish material. Yeah. And it's a great client gift. If you haven't bought it yet, you're listening.
Hey, realtors, if you're looking for a great gift to give to your buyers that have just closed on historic homes in Snohomish, make sure you check out what Taylor's got over at Snohomish Walks.
Perfect. That was a great ad voice too. I love that.
When I think of Snohomish business, I can't think of, what's the name of the Ford dealership that's there? Bickford?
Bickford Ford. Yeah.
I always don't know why.
For a long time.
I don't know why that's when I think of Snohomish, that pops in, and I'm not a car person. That's not my thing. I just think of that place. I think they ran ads on some radio station I listened to in my formative years or something, and it just stuck in my brain. But downtown,
I'd be so curious.
Yeah, the historic downtown Snohomish has always been intriguing to me when we'd go up there and visit and all that. It's been a long time since I've been over to Snohomish. So as we wrap this up, we've got a couple more questions for you. So actually we have three things. And so I'm going to let you pick which order you want to go in. Okay. Do you want the easy question, or do you want the philosophical difficult question first?
Let's do the easy question first.
And the easy question is, what didn't I ask you to talk about that we should have talked about? And if that's the easy question, can you imagine how hard the hard one's going to be?
No. Well, you didn't talk to me about my future projects.
You're right. I didn't. Thank you for catching me on that.
Yeah, which I'm super excited about. And, you know, saying them out loud helps keep me accountable. So I want to do that.
Okay. So let me go. Let me just do this. So what do you got planned for the future?
Okay. Oh, yeah, I'm happy to share. I am working on a book with text and writing. And it's going to be about postcards in Snohomish. I have been working on a postcard collection for a few years, one of my own, and recently started going to postcard shows, which are so fun for like history nerds like me. And I found so much cool stuff, and I just really want to share Snohomish history through this interesting visual art form. So
that's really cool.
I'm working on that. Yeah, I'm so excited.
Very cool. So you're working on a book about Snohomish history through postcards. When approximately are you trying to have this project wrapped up?
The goal is August to publish it.
Of August of 2023?
Oh, 2023.
See, if I don't nail you down there, you're going to be, I said August. I didn't say what year. You know, you can let it slip. Okay. So you're trying by this summer. This summer is
August 2023. Okay. Because at the end of August, I am going to host a pop-up shop. But I'm going to make it not just my products. I also want to make it a mini museum. So folks can come and experience Snohomish history, learn a bit more, grab some products that they want, sign up for walking tours if they want to learn more. And yeah, I think it'll be really fun to.
All right.
I mean, I so much of my business exists online, and I'm used to looking at my computer screen, and it's so great to have these interactions in real life.
Yes, it is. I'm with you on that too. So that's new, and that's something you're working towards. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that we should have?
No, I think
Okay.
we have covered
So
a good chunk.
now's the time for this is the whole show wraps up to this specific question. You ready?
I'm ready.
Cake or pie, and why?
This is the hardest question you have asked all day. I have always historically been a cake person, but now, as I've grown older and perhaps my taste buds have matured, I am a pie person.
Okay.
I like it more simple.
What type of pie?
Anything with rhubarb is
Okay.
good for me.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no wrong answer to that question, by the way. But it's so I always give this not always, most of the time I give this disclaimer. I was interviewing this person, and unfortunately their episode technology failed us. But I interviewed her, and she's a podcast host. And that's a question that they ask a lot of their guests. And I thought, that's just a really ridiculous question. First off, it's just silly. Second of all, it's fun. And third, watching people go, like, you might have asked them if, I said, you have 2 children, which one do you save? I mean, I think that might be an easier answer for some people than cake or pie. And then I ask why, and then they're like really agitated. So I think it's fun, and there are no wrong answers there. Okay, so your vote, rhubarb pie. Okay, last thing. You get basically the final word here. Where can people find more information about you online?
Well, I am most active on my Instagram, which is at Snohomish Walks. Secondly, Facebook at Snohomish Walks, and of course the website, snohomishwalks.com. Okay. And then if you really like Pacific Northwest history, not even just focused on Snohomish Walks, but Pacific Northwest history in general, the Patreon has got long form articles and all sorts of fun stuff.
Awesome. Well, we'll put those in show notes too, so people can just click on them very easily too.
Great. Thank you.
So thank you so much for taking the time to sit down with me today and discuss a little bit about Snohomish's history and your role in it. And I would not have guessed that the Carnegie Library would have been the number 1 pin. I really wouldn't have. I mean, honestly, it's a cool looking pin. I just would have thought it was this is the rationale. So I'm looking at all 4 of these pins. We'll just wrap up with it. I'm looking at these 4 pins. Victorian house. That's kind of hard. Those are kind of like, everyone likes Victorian houses. That's the safe bet. Yeah. But then I was looking at the Oxford Saloon going, well, she kind of said commercial. I kind of got the vibe that houses are more popular than the commercial. And the Oxford pin, I don't mean this, it's just meh to me. That one,
it's a rectangle.
It's a rectangle.
It's just a rectangle.
Right, it's a rectangle. And it's cool, but it's a rectangle. And it's going to be one of those 2. I would not have guessed Snohomish. I really wouldn't have. That would have been my last guess. And I would have gotten it right because I had no other choices. Had there been a 5th pin, I wouldn't have guessed the Carnegie either. I just wouldn't have.
Totally. And it's cool. Not even clear it's a library, It's just like a pop of yellow and people like it and they know it and they love it.
Well, I think Carnegie libraries, because they were so, across the United States. And I think people actually might probably collect Carnegie Library things from all communities.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah, I think that's part of its. If you go back and look at your orders, I would bet you that many of the Carnegie pins were not sold locally.
That is so interesting. I'll apply that to my marketing too.
Well, because, Carnegie, I think that might be, and I'd be just curious if when we're done with this and if you take the time, go look through your Etsy orders for that pin and just see how many are out of state. I'd just be curious what the percentage is. I bet, of course, I was completely wrong on picking which was the popular pin, so I shouldn't bet. But I think that pin might have sold more out of the area than the other ones.
Yeah. By the way, before I forget, did you want to know how much that 1911 house
Oh,
that we were
yes.
talking about is worth?
So let's recap. So we looked at the house that had the bill of lading for it, basically, and it was $39. It was a 9-bedroom home, $3,900 in 1911. Going to be built in 90 days.
That value today is $123,911. 62 cents.
Compared to, I mean, what
So
can you buy?
cheap.
What can you buy for 100? I mean, sorry, what house can you buy in Puget Sound for $123,000?
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing.
Absolutely
You can't
nothing.
even buy a building lot for $123,000.
Yeah, I used to have like a Zillow alert for like $100,000 homes, and it stopped going off a long time ago.
And now it just sends you an email. Really? Really?
It's like, good luck.
We're going to stop sending you these until you get realistic. Oh my gosh. Taylor, thank you so much. This is a lot of fun. I appreciate you being on, and I wish you best of success with your walking tours and all the things that the future of Snohomish has for you.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Hope you enjoyed the show. You can reach me on Twitter at ExploreWaState. I'd love to hear your comments. You can also visit our website at explorewashingtonstate.com. If you know anyone who would like the show, it'd be amazing if you'd share the show with them. This is the biggest way that we grow this show. Good old word of mouth. I'm glad you were here with me today, and I hope to have you listening to the next episode. See you then.